If you've ever thought your day spun out of control quickly, well, just wait until you see the wildly unpredictable sequence of events we're unpacking today. Welcome to our latest explainer. We're diving headfirst into an incredibly chaotic adventure where a really simple, everyday farming problem escalates into an absolute, unmitigated disaster. Right off the bat, it sets up the ultimate mystery. I mean, how on earth do we go from a ruined little vegetable garden to a full-blown pirate invasion? The logic connecting these events is just wonderfully absurd. It's kind of like a perfect study in the butterfly effect, how one tiny little pest problem creates this wild chain reaction that leads to a literal historical maritime threat. So let's break this all down. Starting off with a magnificent carrot crop and some serious samosa dreams. So, at their brand new farmhouse, Motu and Patlu are incredibly proud of their successful harvest. Motu is already dreaming up an entire menu. We're talking carrot halwa, carrot kheer, and he's even inventing the concept of carrot samosas. Life is good, right? Well, actually, their joy is extremely short-lived. Upon closer inspection, they discover their precious carrots aren't just being nibbled on, they're literally being pulled right into the ground by a mysterious, unseen underground thief. It's basically a classic agricultural whodunit taking place right beneath their feet. To protect their crop, they are forced into a rapid and honestly hilarious security escalation. Phase 1, a scarecrow, which, by the way, the crows completely ignore because they refuse to be treated like cowards. Phase 2, upgrading to modern tech by setting up a CCTV camera for nighttime surveillance. And finally, Phase 3, they bring out the big guns, an irresistible scented cage trap to catch this mud-dwelling culprit red-handed. Which leads us to the cunning rabbit's theft and a totally unexpected emotional turn. Against all odds, the scented trap actually works, and they catch a rabbit. But to avoid punishment, this thief puts on a massive, completely over-the-top guilt trip. He's crying about his starving children, swearing he only stole to feed his family. He dramatically pleads, "Tell my wife I promise to stay with her for life. Sorry I won't be able to fulfill it." I mean, it is pure, unadulterated melodrama, and honestly, it's delivered flawlessly. And amazingly, the theatrical performance works. Hook, line, and sinker. Motu and Patlu graciously agree to a highly unusual peaceful resolution. They completely free the rabbit, grant him his own dedicated corner of the farm, and, get this, even agree to grow carrots just to keep his family fed. A heartwarming, peaceful resolution, right? Case closed? Well, no good deed goes unpunished. Word travels at lightning speed in the animal kingdom, and a massive horde of the rabbit's friends immediately rush in, demanding their own plots of land. They just assume Motu and Patlu are handing out free real estate to anyone who asks. Our heroes are suddenly forced to chase them all away in a total panic. And that brings us to a new guest and a whole new kind of trouble, with a bizarre trade. Because just when you think things have finally settled down, a seemingly innocent trade escalates the stakes to a totally ridiculous level. On one hand, you have a hungry, crying rabbit. Sure, annoying, but ultimately harmless. On the other hand, you somehow end up with a literal bloodthirsty treasure-hunting pirate. Let's see exactly how they managed to trade a minor agricultural pest for a historical menace. Okay, so here's how this disastrous trade unfolds. First, Motu foolishly trades away almost all of their household items to a junk seller. During the chaotic struggle of this transaction, Motu somehow gets himself entirely stuck inside a wooden barrel. And amidst all this absolute nonsense, he acquires a mysterious magical telescope that once belonged to a legendary pirate. Suddenly, a tiny figure inside the telescope emerges, physically stepping out and growing into the commanding Captain Crook. And he wastes no time clarifying the power dynamic here. He makes it crystal clear that he is a sea parrot, he gives orders, and he certainly does not take them from anyone. Welcome to the terror of Captain Crook, targeting for furry Nagar. So this quiet farming community is entirely unprepared for a maritime invasion, and now the real chaos begins. Motu and Patlu initially think, "Oh hey, we've freed a magical wish-granting genie." But Crook aggressively rejects that idea. He isn't here to grant wishes. He demands immediate access to treasure. When they accidentally mention a local jewelry shop, Crook instantly targets for free Nagar to loot it for all its gold, silver, and diamonds. Enter the law. Inspector Chingham confidently arrives to save the day, declaring that escaping his clutches is impossible. But
He gets completely humiliated. Captain Crook gleefully treats the arrest attempt like a violent game of cops and robbers on a playground, just beating up the inspector while having the absolute time of his life.
So how do they fix this? Enter the time machine failure and Dr. Jatka's desperate trap. With the town at the absolute mercy of a marauding pirate, Dr. Jatka devises what is actually a brilliant master plan. Step 1, they'll lure Crook to a fake bank filled with glittering treasure. Step 2, trick him into stepping inside the bank vault, which is actually a disguised time machine. And step 3, push the button to send him right back to the past. But during the execution, Motu's complete lack of situational awareness almost ruins the whole thing. He loudly questions why his friend suddenly owns a bank when they can't even afford samosas. I mean, talk about blowing your cover. Thankfully, Crook's immense greed for gold entirely blinds him to this incredibly obvious setup, and he dives straight in.
And then comes the catastrophic twist. The initial button press works perfectly, and Crook vanishes into the past. Problem solved, right? Wrong. Motu, completely unable to contain his impatience and excitement, hits every single remaining button on the console. The time machine violently spins in reverse, bringing back not just Captain Crook, but 3 dangerous pirates, including Captain Brooke and Captain Shruck, along with an entire crew.
Which brings us to the end of today's explainer. So I leave you with this final massive cliffhanger to think about. A really simple endeavor to just protect a tiny carrot patch has somehow morphed into a full-scale time-traveling catastrophe. How in the world are Motu and Patlu going to survive not 1 but 3 dangerous time-traveling pirate captains and their entire crew? Let that sink in for a minute and keep seeking the answers.